Hey guys, it is Julie here with JT.Wealth. In today's video, we are discussing what stocks are best to buy depending on who wins the presidential election. So let's get into it. All right, guys, welcome back and thank you so much for being here. I do apologize for being away for the last few days and not posting any videos, but I have been fighting off a nasty cold, but I'm finally on the road to recovery here and out of bed, so wanted to get back on here. And of course, it is an interesting week right now as we are amidst a very tight presidential election and we could still be days away from finding out who is the winner. Which brings us to today's topic, where we're going to take a look at some stocks and sectors that could benefit depending on who wins the presidency. And these are based on a couple great articles from Kiplinger on the best stocks to buy if President Donald Trump is reelected or if Joe Biden wins the presidency. So links will also be to these down below. Now, before we jump into this video, I just want to reiterate and highlight some points from a video we made last week, talking about common investing mistakes people can make during volatile markets or specifically election periods. And a big one is that it doesn't really matter who is in the Oval Office. The stock market tends to do just fine regardless. And Charles Sizemore's article reiterates the same, as he says it's best to leave your politics at the door when investing. No matter how much you like or dislike the man in the White House, presidential policies generally matter a lot less for the stock market than Federal Reserve policy or the general health of the economy. But he does highlight several stocks and companies that would benefit more under either a Democratic or Republican presidency. So we are going to take a look at what stocks he thinks would flourish under a Trump re-election, and after that we'll get into the ones that would flourish under a Joe Biden presidency. And just before we jump into all of that, this is just your friendly reminder to please make sure you are subscribed to the channel, and if you enjoy this video, make sure you hit that thumbs up button too. Okay, so the first two companies that we are going to look at that would benefit from a Trump re-election are banks, as Republican administrations have traditionally been friendlier to large banks than Democratic ones. And Trump's slashing of the corporate tax rates in the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was particularly beneficial to them. So first is the Bank of America, and beyond the election, Bank of America isn't a bad-looking stock at its current prices. It yields a full 3% in dividends, and Warren Buffett recently topped up his already large investment with Bank of America with an additional purchase of $800 million in their stock. The second bank is JP Chase, but let's be clear, these guys are a high-quality mega bank with an attractive dividend yield, so they should fare well regardless of who is in the White House. But JP Chase would appear to benefit more from a Trump administration than a Biden one. For one, the corporate tax rate alone would count for a 4.1% difference in JP Morgan's earnings per share. And as a general rule, Republican administrations are less likely than Democratic administrations to implement stricter banking regulations. Now, the next one is interesting, as President Trump is known to not have the best relationship with them. And that is the New York Times. And in this case, Trump needs the media as much as they need him. The outrage cycle keeps readers returning to see the newest, most outrageous headline, and the constant media attention keeps Trump relevant. Without the constant drama coming out at the Trump White House, news consumption in general could die down, which in turn could provide advertisers with less incentive to pay top dollar. Now, the last couple of decades have been tough for traditional print media as most content is moving online, and the future isn't going to get any easier in that regard. But New York Times has done a decent job at transitioning readers to paid subscriptions. Now, on the topic of online news, we come to social media, including Twitter, Facebook, Google, so I'm going to group these together and go through it a bit quickly. Now, it's no secret that President Trump favors Twitter as his primary medium for communication, mostly bypassing the traditional media. And as a practical matter, a Biden presidency would make Twitter far less relevant, as Biden is unlikely to rule by tweet. A Democratic administration also would be more likely to force the site to crack down on controversial posts or to accuse the site of facilitating hate speech. Longer term, there are serious political issues regarding Twitter and other social media platforms that will have to be worked out. But in the short term, the constant noise of the tweeter-in-chief should be good for Twitter's bottom line. Now, along the same lines, Facebook would also benefit for another 4 years of Trump in the office. Now, like Twitter, Facebook does take abuse from all sides. To those on the left, Facebook is a forum for fake news and disinformation. To the right, Facebook represents the thought police, effectively censoring many right-wing voices. And social media will probably come under real regulatory scrutiny at some point, but harsh new regulation is unlikely to come under a Trump presidency. And last but not least is Alphabet, or Google. Now, they did just have a suit filed against them from the US Justice Department, alleging that the company abuses its monopoly power in search to stifle competition, as Google's search engine enjoys an 87% share of the US market. But remember, Republican administrations tend to be more sympathetic to business and tend to take a more laissez-faire approach to regulations. Democrats have made taming big tech a major policy priority. All right, now let's switch over and see what stocks would do well under a Democratic Joe Biden presidency. Rodney Johnson, the president of economic research firm HS Dent Publishing, said that a Biden administration will mean more regulatory scrutiny for financial and energy stocks and probably higher taxes across the board. But there will be opportunities. Infrastructure spending, green energy, and healthcare are all Democratic priorities and should do well under a Biden presidency. So the stocks and sectors that we are seeing that would benefit under a Joe Biden presidency follow a pretty green theme. Starting off with Brookfield Renewable Partners, which owns a portfolio of wind, solar, hydroelectric, and other green energy properties. Now, Biden is less focused on environmental issues than many of his Democratic peers. Environmentalism and sustainability are still a big part of his platform. So it's still safe to assume that green energy and infrastructure will be a priority. Second up would be NextEra Energy. Now, these guys aren't the most exciting company on the list as they are an electric utility, but unlike many of their peers, NextEra has a focus on renewable energy, which makes it interesting in the event of a Biden win. So they serve about 5.5 million customers in Florida, but are best known as the world's largest producer of wind and solar energy, as well as one of the largest battery storage companies in the world. This emphasis on green energy has made the company popular, ranking #1 among utilities in Fortune's 2020 list of most admired companies. And one last green energy play is First Solar, who is a leading manufacturer of solar power systems, and importantly, in an age of pandemics and vulnerable supply chains, it is American. Now, it is important to note that this is a wildly volatile stock and it's not cheap. But if you believe that Biden is serious about pushing for a greener future, then green energy plays like First Solar are among the best stocks to buy if he becomes president. Now, sticking with the green theme, but moving to a very different type of green, Democratic politicians tend to have a much more relaxed stance on cannabis. Now, Joe Biden does not publicly support legalization at the federal level, at least not yet, but it's not hard to see him coming around to that over the course of 4 years. Which brings us to Canopy Growth, who is a leader in recreational and medical products in the United States, Canada, Germany, and the United Kingdom. Like most cannabis stocks, Canopy became something of a bubble stock in 2018 and 2019, which did burst a little over a year ago. So the shares trade today for a lot less than half of their old highs. Now, we probably won't see a return to those bubble highs anytime soon, but under a Biden presidency, don't be surprised if Canopy and other similar companies emerge as some of the best stocks across this term. And continuing on our green theme here, we get to electric vehicles. And of course, you can't talk EV companies without talking about Tesla, who would be a natural beneficiary of a Biden presidency. Now, one of Biden's stated objectives is to make the United States the leader in electric vehicle production and acceptance. And while Tesla isn't the only game in town for electric vehicles, it's clearly the largest and best known play. Now, of course, it's not like Tesla needs Joe Biden to generate interest in its cars. They've been doing just fine doing that under a Trump administration, but a rising tide lifts all boats, so that push towards the green would certainly benefit them. And Biden will be good for several electric vehicle stocks, but also electric delivery drones, which brings us to Workhorse Group. And the potential here is obvious. The delivery business is booming during the pandemic, and that's not likely going to change once life gets back to normal. Already, they count the UPS and Ryder systems among their customers. And a Biden victory could further smooth the road ahead for workhorse. Prodding and subsidies from a Biden administration would likely encourage companies to upgrade their trucking fleets to electric models. So this sector would have strong tailwinds at its back with a green-orientated Democrat in the White House. Now, last on the list, we look at healthcare. Now, Biden broke rank with many of his fellow Democrats by stopping short of promising Medicare for all or any sort of single-payer healthcare system. Instead, Biden has promised to provide a Medicare-like government option for health plans and to make private sector plans more affordable and less complex. We'll see how successful he is in this endeavor if he wins, but regardless, a Biden win would be bullish for health insurers like United Health Group. They're particularly well placed because it specializes in Medicare supplemental plans. Now, healthcare is still a political minefield, so still be very careful investing in this sector. But a Biden win could create a long runway for groups like the United Health Group. So those were just a sample of many stocks listed on various articles about which would benefit under a Democratic or Republican presidency. This video, of course, is in no way a recommendation to buy or sell any stocks. It is just for information and educational purposes. Any trades should always be based on your own research and due diligence. Now, I am a long-term investor, so I don't get too hung up on the volatility and changes in the White House there, as my long-term plans don't really change based on that. But I thought it was interesting, some of these sectors and the reasons why they would benefit under the different parties. So I would love to hear from you guys in that regard. What did you think of these sectors under each presidency? Are there any that surprised you? Are there any others that you think would do really well under a particular president? I always love hearing from you guys, so make sure you leave it down below in the comments. If you made it all the way to the end of the video here, thank you. I apologize for being a bit nasally and probably a little lower energy than normal. Make sure you hit the like button and that you are subscribed, and don't forget to check out some of the great links in the description down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have a fantastic week, and cheers.